If you poured the water incredibly gently and never stirred it, quite possibly. Yeah, that would be a terrible idea to find out, but just, you know. And as a side note with immersion, this will ruffle a few feathers, but I like doing that. There is absolutely no point whatsoever. Am I making my point so far that I feel strongly about this? Okay.
I think so.
In doing any sort of pre-wet or pre-infusion with an immersion brew. Doesn't make sense. It actually hurts the uniformity of extraction, which I can explain over wine later or something. But if you're going to make an immersion brew, just dump all the water in at once. It'll actually make your extraction more even, because basically all the grounds are getting a crack at getting extracted by the water when the water is a good solvent, when it's very clean. If you just pour a little bit of water and let it soak in, some of the grounds will initially get wet with a liquid that's not a very good solvent.
So does that mean that if I'm making an AeroPress, I should just pour all the water at once quickly?
Pretty much. Yeah. Now, it's not to say, I mean, like with anything else, like you might do it two ways. You might say, well, I like the other one better. But if you kind of get all your ducks in a row and figure everything out, eventually you won't be able to beat the one that went in all at once. But, yeah. Cool. Okay, two last things. This is what most coffee beds look like to some degree. Like, it's hard to tell, but you'll see in a second that a lot of the grounds are kind of up the filter. This is kind of pretty typical, but what it should look like is more like that, is that the bed should be flat, it should be not quite as moist looking, and the walls should be relatively white. So again, lots of stuff on the walls, not so much stuff on the walls. Same batch size, same basket. Okay. Did I cram in lots of stuff in 1 hour? Is that okay?
Yeah,
right.
I think that was pretty cool.
All right.
Now we have 5 minutes for questions.
No, actually, I have one more thing to say. Sorry, I forgot about this one.
It's like Steve Jobs always did.
Exactly.
Oh, one more thing.
So when you are programming your batch brewer, this is totally counterintuitive. I've only met like 5 people who ever kind of figured this out of the blue. And actually, I didn't know it myself. Vince Fideli taught me this years ago. When you do a larger batch, your brew time, the amount of time during which the water is dumping onto the grounds, should be shorter for a larger batch. And here's why. Is that short half batch, I'm making this up, but let's say the liquid takes 30 seconds to get through the coffee bed. Okay, if you're using the same basket, but you do now a double-size batch, the bed is taller. It's going to take a lot longer for the liquid to get through it. So if you want to use the same ratio and the same grind to get the same extraction, the same TDS, et cetera, you need the same total contact time. And the way to do that is to make the brew a little faster with the large batch, so that, let's say, like a 4-minute brew time plus the 1 minute that it takes to get through gives you a 5-minute contact time. With a smaller batch, you might go to 4:30 on your brew time, because your dwell time is only 30 seconds, and they both end up at a 5-minute total contact time, and they both will taste nearly identical. So, does anybody currently do that? Cool. Everybody should do that. And yet, almost everywhere I've ever been, the larger batches have more brew time on the screen, and that's a mistake. So, okay, questions?
Awesome.
Yes.
A small question regards this, the bed. If we do the same, for example, with Kalita, 500 mils or 250 mils, so the contact time should be, the same works with the manual brew?
It's much harder with a manual brew, because it's easy with the machine to just program it to pour slightly slowly or faster, but with a manual brew, you should aim for something similar, but it's not going to be as easy to nail it. You probably, with something like a Kalita or V60, just want to find a batch size that you feel best about and try to be consistent with that, rather than try to do too many different sizes. So, yeah. Where are we at? Callie?
Fit.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, Tim.
The 3 to 5 centimeters, is that wet or dry?
Dry.
Okay.
Good question. Yes.
Well, let's get it, we get it on the video when we ask it through the mic.
Well, hello.
Hi.
Hi. How do you feel about agitation with, like, because some bulk brewers like have a thing where they can agitate it quite aggressively?
How do I feel about agitation?
How do you feel about it?
It's not working well.
Tell me your emotions.
Oh, okay. I was, I'm all for judicious agitation. I'm laughing because for years I was like, everybody should agitate, and like basically every barista in America told me I was an idiot, which was fine. That usually makes me feel good when all the Americans disagree with me. But basically, yes, agitation is good, especially if you're doing a manual brew. Like in the very beginning, you want all the grounds to get wet right away. If you don't agitate, sometimes some of the grounds will take, say, a full minute before they get wet. Well, that's a problem because that means that some grounds were wet and extracting 1 minute earlier than others. So you're basically guaranteeing an uneven extraction. So agitation, especially in the beginning, can really help you try to force all the grounds to get wet in a very short period of time with very similar solvents so that you can get closer to an even extraction. So love agitation.
All right, I have a question. So you can achieve same extraction yield by grinding finer, having shorter brew time, and then having longer brew time and grinding coarser.
Correct.
Have you found, so you would prefer grinding coarser and having longer brew time?
Yes.
Why?
I find that if I do that blind and can kind of control everything carefully, that on average I find the coarser ones are, even though the extraction level is the same, it has less bitterness and astringency, presumably due to the presence of fewer fines. So,
Cool.
I,
Do we have more questions?
Hi.
Hi.
Could you come back to the slides with the flatbed and the...
Yep.
Yeah. So you told that the amount of the coffee is the same. And
Yes.
What are the difference between brewing parameters?
Really, this was just a finer grind, just to make the bed climb up the wall higher and then also drain slower.
All right.
Okay.
All right, let's give a big round of applause to Scott.